Howdy, how long does it take to change? You're going to find the answer in this video, and it's not what you expect. Thank you, thank you. Well, I was trained, and almost all mental health professionals have been trained to believe that change takes a long, long time. It takes years, decades of trauma and bad experiences to develop depression, and it takes years to get over it. And that's what we were taught as a psychiatric resident. That's what I learned at Stanford when I was a medical student. That's what I learned at University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine when I was doing my psychiatric residency training. And if you believe that it takes forever to change, it will. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You get to feeling hopeless, your therapist gets to feeling hopeless, and if you don't challenge that thought, it will appear to be true. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, really. And when the therapy I did, we were just talk to people forever. We sometimes gave them prescriptions for pills that were rarely effective called antidepressants. And I didn't see a lot of help coming from antidepressants. I've given them out on over 10,000 occasions. I've written prescriptions for antidepressants, but I've never been impressed with what they do. And the latest research indicates they're not all that effective. I'll leave it at that. But we would just talk, and my supervisors who were supervising me in residency, they were like, one year I had 2 psychoanalysts supervising me, and they said, you don't say much in sessions, just tell them to get all their negative feelings out. And then the patients would cry and get mad and say, you're not helping me. And I would say, tell me more. That's what they said. Move your hands like this and say, tell me more. I'll do it now. Tell me more. See how stupid it is? Because people wanted techniques. Now we have all kinds of fantastic techniques, and things have really, really changed. But people still believe that change takes a long time. And what I've learned is really powerful ways to help people change, and maybe you change the way you think and feel. And in my clinical experience, change happens really fast. Now, I'll give you a couple of examples of that. One anyway. I was doing a workshop in Denver, and we have another video on this if you want to get the details. But a woman came up at the end of a 2-day workshop. I'd done a live demonstration on anxiety with a volunteer from the audience. And I was packing up and getting ready to leave, and she said, gee, Dr. Burns, I'm sorry I didn't volunteer because I've really had anxiety, and I was just had a question for you. She said, I've been in psychoanalysis for my fear of elevators, elevator phobia, and I've been in psychoanalysis for 20 years. 5 days a week on the couch, and my elevator phobia hasn't gone away. And I asked my analyst, how many more years do I need to do this before I'm cured? And just last week he told me we still need 3 more years talking about my childhood before my elevator phobia would go away. And I just want to ask you, Dr. Burns, in your experience, how long does it take to get cured from an elevator phobia? And I said, well, to be honest with you, I've treated 4 or 5 or 6 people with elevator phobias, and I would say the longest it took was 15 minutes, and the average is about 10 minutes. And she said, what are you talking about? That sounds impossible. I've been trying for over 20 years, 5 days a week on the couch. And how could you cure me in 10 minutes? I said, well, there's an elevator right there. Just get on it and ride up and down until you're cured. It probably won't take more than 5 or 10 minutes. And so there's more to the story. You can hear it, but essentially it took her about 3 minutes to be cured. It's quite an entertaining and an amazing story. But I've told this idea that change usually happens even faster than that. When I'm working with people, it might take us several sessions to get up to the point where they finally find the technique that crushes their belief, like I'm not as good as I am, or I'm defective, or during a panic attack I'm going to lose control and go crazy, or whatever you're telling yourself. Or when I give my talk at my church group, I know my mind is going to go blank, and I'm going to look like a fool, and people will ask questions I can't answer, and people will start will lose respect for me. Whatever these thoughts are, the moment you put the lie to them, your emotions can instantly change. And this is how I work, and this is what I experience in my therapy. When I work with people, it's usually for a single 2-hour session from start to the end of therapy. And then if they maybe need one brief follow-up after that, usually we don't even do that. But it's even faster than a 2-hour session, because we're building up to the point where we find the technique that crushes their negative thought. And that process, when the change actually happens, is usually about 60 seconds or 30 seconds. And so when people say, how long does it take to recover from years or decades of severe depression and anxiety, I can say, well, typically 30 to 60 seconds. And then people get all pissed off when I say that, because it seems like quackery. But your thoughts create your moods, and it's your belief in a negative thought that I'm not as good as I should be, I'm worthless, I'm inferior to other people, I'm not as handsome as I should be, I'm not as pretty as I should be, I'm not as smart as I should be, there's nothing special about me. Those distorted and vicious thoughts, which are in your brain, that's the cause of your negative feelings. And the moment you learn to crush those thoughts, challenge and crush them, your negative feelings can disappear quickly. But this is hard for people to believe until you've experienced it personally, and then you see, like, this is as true as the fact that there's skin on my hands. It's very natural once you've experienced it, once you've seen it. But it angers people, and this is controversial, because most people, particularly if you've devoted your career to long-term therapy, then that's where your soul is, where your identity is. I gave a talk at a conference in San Francisco. It was an analytic conference for psychoanalysts, and they want to have a token cognitive therapist there to show that it's not all just psychoanalysis. So they invited me to give one of their hour talks, and I talked about these high-speed techniques we were developing at Stanford, and how we were beginning to see people recover with incredible speed that I would have thought impossible even 15 or 20 years ago. And I thought the audience would be really hostile, because they were all psychoanalysts in the audience, but they were delightful, they were open, they were receptive. It was really fun. But afterwards, at the end, they had a panel with all of the speakers to ask questions. And I was seated next to one of the other speakers with some woman with some famous psychoanalytic institute in San Francisco. And she went over and whispered in her ear, and she said, Dr. Burns, I want you to know that almost all of my patients have been with me for more than 10 years now. And a few of them are just starting to make little tiny baby steps. And what she was saying was, she was trying to put me down. She was saying, David, I'm doing the true thing, true change. True change takes a long time, and you're just involved with fool's gold. And so it's really a hostile atmosphere, and our field is filled with cults, to be honest with you, and everyone who believes the way their cult teaches them to believe. And now we're moving more toward science, toward measurement, and toward a future where high-speed change is going to be the norm, what's expected, what's demanded, and not some weird thing. But to give you one more example of this, one thing that's considered very difficult in long-term is obsessive-compulsive disorder. And an example would be Howard Hughes, who ended up with this fear of germs. He had a germ phobia, and he had OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, and he ended up living in the top of some hotel in Las Vegas in a penthouse suite, but he spent all of his time taping the doors shut so germs couldn't get in. It was a very intricate and horrible, isolating and lonely existence he had, and at the time he was one of the richest men in the world. But get so unhappy. Well, we had a lady like that in my training group at Stanford, and she asked me if I would be willing to treat her as a teaching demonstration for the group one night. I agreed to do that along with Jill Levitt, who's my co-therapist, and we teach that group together. And if you're a therapist and you want to learn these new techniques, you can attend my weekly Stanford psychotherapy training group for free. It's free to therapists all over the world. It's virtual now. And so if you'd like to learn these techniques, we'd love to have you. Just let me know, and I'll put you in touch with the fellow who does the intake coordination for new people. But at any rate, we started out and did some cool introductory stuff on empathy. She said she had the same thing Howard Hughes had, and she'd had it for 20, 25 years. And after empathizing and seeing if she was really motivated, seeing if she was really willing to do what it would take to be treated successfully, I said, are you ready now for the cure? And she said, let's do it. So we were in a seminar room at Stanford in the Behavioral Sciences building, and there were about 30 students there, 20 or something, and I said, now let's go out and get the job done. So we went out of the seminar room and went into the women's bathroom, and I said, okay, let's start out by touching these toilet seats with our hands. And she said, oh, no, I couldn't do that. That's horrible. And she said, let's see if you can do it. And I said, sure. So I touch this toilet seat. And then she suddenly, oh, I'm going to do that too. And she started touching it, and then she pulled it up. She said, I'm going to touch the inside here too. I said, how anxious are you? And she said, on a 0 to 100, she said 120. And I said, oh, good. Let's see if we can get it up to 150. Now let's go down to the front door, and I'll have you touch all the door handles, because she's afraid people are touching door handles and she'll get germs. And so she forced herself to rub her hands over all these door handles, and she's freaking out. She says, now it's 150. And I said, well, let's see if we can push it up to 175. I want you to freak out. And when I work with people, I never get them to try to control their anxiety or their depression, but to go, especially with anxiety, go in the opposite direction. That's where the cure comes, when you try to make it worse. And then we went out in front of the building. We went out, there's a nice courtyard there in front of that building where all the psychiatry is practiced. And but there was this trash can, and it was empty, but a big thing, and it had all this grime inside of it, like black, filthy stuff. And I said, Sara, now I want you to put your hands in there and get them all covered with this grime, and then rub it all over your face. And she said, I can't. She said, that's impossible. I'll vomit. I said, okay, put your hands in there and vomit. That'll make it even better. And she said, no, I can't. You do it. So I put my hands in there and got my hands all black and grimy and rubbed my face. I said, now it's your turn. And so she did it. I know this is on another video. I'm sorry, but it ties in with this video too. So she reached to put her hands in, rubbed them all over her face. All the 30 students started cheering. And then we went back up to the seminar, and she sat down, and she was crying. I said, why are you crying, Sara? She says, because I'm not afraid anymore. I was just cured. God bless you, Dr. Burns. And that was the end of 25 years of obsessive compulsive disorder. And I've seen her as recently about a week ago, and that was a good 2 or 3 years ago. She's still doing great. She's just, it's transformed her life. The thing that I wanted to mention, why I wanted to bring that video up, is I did a podcast with Sara that was showing that fast change is possible. And one of my students had his iPhone there and videoed that 30 seconds when she put her hands in. So we have proof, documentation that this actually occurred, and she came on a podcast and talked about her experience. But then I got I get mainly positive emails. I would say 99% positive. But sometimes when I make these controversial statements that recovery can happen fast, like her moment of change was sudden. It was over. Like when she did that with her hands and put on her face, that cured her. It probably happened in 15 seconds. It was a whoosh and it was gone. It's like a sudden change in the brain. And I got beautiful videos from people. Maybe you'll comment on this video or email me. I love to respond to those things. But this one fellow wrote, and he just had two words in his email, F you, and it wasn't, F, it was F, with 4 letters after it, exclamation point. And apparently he was just really pissed off because he thought I was a fraud, a con man, and that it's impossible that people can recover quickly. And what I say, it's impossible for people to improve in any other way than quickly. And it might take a while to find the technique that's going to work for you, that's going to help you stop believing the messages that you give yourself that are the source of your misery. But anyway, that's today's video. Thank you for that. And if you'd like to learn about, the technique that works for Sara won't work for you, there's many techniques. And if you'd like to learn about them, you might want to check out our Feeling Great app. You can take a free ride on it, and it'll teach you about all these kinds of techniques to help you change the way you think and feel. So thank you so much for tuning in. This is one of many controversies that we'll have, and I hope you like them. My only problem is sometimes I sound a little too cynical or critical because my thinking is so much different from the thinking of the vast majority of people in the field of psychiatry or psychotherapy and that type of thing. But I feel strongly, and I appreciate the privilege and the honor of sharing my thinking with you, and hope you're doing well. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.